All right. What I'd like to do is finish up from last week. There is your, Shannon, will you get, it's the one with the, oh, I'm sorry. The one with the scroll right here. The United Monarchy, which, good morning. The United Monarchy, which we were talking about last time. And you can turn to page 5 on that, and I'll put a few on these tables for if you didn't bring it. And we have this here. And here's one more. Good morning. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So what I want to look at on that last handout is the Fortress of Elah. So last time we were talking about the United Kingdom, and specifically about Saul and David. So the last thing that I didn't get to last time was the Fortress of Elah. And good morning. There is a name there that I don't dare try to pronounce. It looks something like Kirbet Kayafa. And it is a major fortress that's been found. It was constructed about 1050 to 970 BC. And it's one with massive double walls. So I think it's neat anytime they find a great fortress like this from a long time ago. But it has massive double walls. These walls are made of 200,000 tons of stone. So roughly, 200,000 tons of stone. I can't even compare that to anything. They are 700 meters long. And I did the math on that, and I can't remember how thick that would make them. I think it would make them something like, I can't remember, like 10 meters thick or something like that. But they are just massive. This fortress is referenced in, we're not going to look it up, but 1 Samuel 17:52 and 1 Chronicles 4:31, when, depending on your translation, it refers to it as the two gates. Although some translations might just use the word Sha'arayim, but it means the two gates. There was an ostracon, so an inscription that was discovered pretty recently in 2008 from about 1000 BC. And do you have that, Shannon? Will you show me? Will you just show me the page you're looking at, Shannon?
I was on First Chronicles.
Will you just show it to me, the page you're looking at? Okay, I'm sorry, the page on the handout you're looking at. Thank you very much. Okay, so right down below, I don't have it in front of me. So right down below, you can see a translation, and it says, "You shall not do," and then in brackets, "it." And so the reason there's these brackets there is they had trouble translating. Maybe some letters are missing or some words are missing. So what you see in brackets is filled into the translation. So it says approximately, "You shall not do it, but worship the God. Judge the slave and the widow. Judge the orphan and the stranger. Plead the infant. Plead for the poor, the widow. Rehabilitate the poor at the hands of the king. Protect the poor and the slave. Support the stranger." So you can see a picture of it down below on page, whatever that last page is. And this is not a photograph of it with the writing. Are y'all on that page? Yes, okay, you are. This isn't a photograph of it, but this is where a linguist came and he just copied on paper what the letters look like to him. And so from those letters, what they look like to him in Hebrew, they came up with that approximate translation. Why this is important in archaeology: it is the oldest Hebrew inscription that we know of, that we found. Interesting at this site, just to add to credibility that it was Israelites who occupied this area. There are no pig bones discovered at the site because they wouldn't have had pigs. There is Israelite pottery and no Philistine pottery. So it's just an interesting find in that it's possibly the oldest Hebrew inscription that we have. All right, so that is the Fortress at Elah. And that is where I intended to end last week. And now we'll drive on with this week's lesson. Any questions before I continue?
That was discovered in 2008?
That was discovered in 2008. Yeah, they are still discovering things, yes. Yeah. Okay. 2008, that sounds so recent to us. When I tell my children about something discovered 2008, so very recently, like to them, that's ancient, 2008.
Yeah. Not for me.
Because if it happened before I was born, it's ancient history, whenever you were born. Okay. So now we're going to look at me finding my right lesson. Here we go. Week 6, October 1st. Happy October. We're going to look at Solomon and archaeological finds involving Solomon and the divided kingdom, the kingdom of Israel after his time. So I'd like to read to you from the Bible, 1 Kings 9:15, and we're going to read some from the Bible. I have most of the verses here, and we'll relate what it says in the Bible to what we find archaeologically. 1 Kings 9:15 says, "Here is the account of the forced labor King Solomon conscripted to build the Lord's temple, his own palace, the supporting terraces, the wall of Jerusalem, and Hatzor, Megiddo, and Gezer." So at this point, if you're lost, we're now on this new handout that says October 1st. Okay, so what did that say he built? He built the house of Yahweh, and this has been dated to 967 BC. He built his own house. He built a citadel, and he built wells at Jerusalem, Hatzor, Megiddo, and Gezer. Now, archaeologists have found those wells that he built. There's an architectural structure called a Solomonic Gate, basically a gate that is the kind that was around his citadel. And you can see the picture there. And it's got these different, basically the gate, there you can see a walkway that you walk through, and there are these different chambers where they could close those gates, they could have guards posted, but that's what's called a Solomonic Gate in the picture. And so it's neat that, that's a photograph, not a drawing, so they have found those gates still standing there. Are we missing those? Oh, okay. Well, here they are. One more here. Here we go. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. All right. Now, there was syncretism during Solomon's time. Syncretism means a mixture of religions. Worship whoever, whatever you want to, mix it all together. It's a mixture of religions. And we read, once the kingdom gets divided, it's a sad part in the Bible as we're reading that the Israelites are straying from God. And so we can read this sad part. Well, much of it is sad, but here are just 4 verses. In 1 King 11, starting verse 4, "As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. He followed Ashtoreth," that's underlined and bold printed by me because I'll come back and comment on that, "the goddess of the Sidonians, and Moloch, the detestable god of the Ammonites." Verse 6, "So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord." That question mark is not supposed to be there. That's a typographical error. It's not asking questions. Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord? No, he did definitely do evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely as David his father had done. On a hill east of Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and for Moloch, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Okay, so I underlined and bold printed in that text Ashtoreth. Ashtoreth, that's the Hebrew rendition, or I should say our English translation of the Hebrew rendition. We know of a goddess that was worshipped, the goddess of Ugarit and the Phoenicians, named Astorte, and so the Hebrews wrote that as Ashtoreth, who represented fertility. And this possibly, most likely, is related to the Asherah. You may remember throughout the Old Testament, these different kings put up Asherah poles, and someone else, some good king, came along and tore them down. So the Asherah were probably related to worship of Ashtoreth. It was a sacred pole that the Israelites, with this syncretism, they actually made to represent Yahweh. So it's not necessarily that they were saying, we are worshiping Ashtoreth alone. They always had in the back of their minds, yeah, we're worshiping Yahweh, yeah, whatever. And it was kind of a yeah, whatever thing. So, but we'll put up these Asherah. So that's the idea of syncretism, a mixing of religions. We'll take this God, we'll take that God. It's, we're Israelites, so we know we should be worshiping Yahweh. And it's kind of a half-hearted thing. Okay. Now, the temple that he built, we find artifacts from it from various time periods, including tiles, jewelry, arrowheads, stone vessels, and nails. After Solomon, the kingdom was divided, and so we come upon Omri. He was the 6th king of Israel. He reigned from 884 to 873 BC. And he was the first king who reigned after Solomon, whose name has been found in ancient inscriptions. So we see his name written. He ruled in the capital Samaria, and this would have been at 876 where that was established. Omri established a royal city with a citadel, and many remains of it are still there today. His son Ahab, the infamous Ahab, did additional building. 1 Kings 22:39 mentions, it's kind of at the very end of Ahab's life, it parenthetically mentions that he decorated the palace with ivory. My NIV says he inlaid the palace with ivory. What archaeologists have found is rooms in the palace that are decorated with intricate ivory. So we do see that attested in archaeology. This next stone, you see a picture of it at the bottom of page 2, the Mesha stela, otherwise known as the Moabite Stone. I mentioned it. If you're getting deja vu, that's okay. I talked about it, I think, last time in class, but it's relevant to today's lesson. So let's just go over it again. It was inscribed about 840 BC. It's using the Phoenician alphabet, and it was discovered in 1868. Now, related to that, let me read you the biblical text. 2 King, verses 3 through 5, says, Now Mesha, king of Moab, all right, so he's a bad guy, raised sheep, and he had to supply the king of Israel with 100,000 lambs and with the wool of 100,000 rams. All right, so Israel had at some point in the past conquered the Moabites. Verse 5, But after Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. Well, the Moabite stone was commissioned by this king Mesha, the king of Moab, and it records this victory over Israel. So verse 5 in 2 Kings 3 says they rebelled against Israel. This is Mesha's telling of the story. It includes Mesha's name. It includes talking about Omri. It tells of the house of David. It tells, and again, this is Mesha's interpretation. You can turn to page 3. It tells how the Moabite god Chemosh had been angry with his people, with the Moabites, and had allowed them to be subjugated to Israel. Chemosh then returned and assisted Mesha to throw off the yoke of Israel and restore the lands of Moab. The stone also describes the building projects that Mesha did. This important stone, it's the longest inscription ever found in the region from the Iron Age. It's the most extensive description ever recovered that refers to the kingdom of Israel, and in particular it calls it the house of Omri. It bears the earliest extra-biblical reference, certain extra-biblical reference, to the Israelite God Yahweh, and it mentions the house of David. So pretty significant discovery there. Any questions so far? All right. Speaking about bad guys, Jezebel. The seal of Jezebel. You see a picture down below. From the 9th century BC, this was discovered in 1964. And it's written in Phoenician. And one thing of interest, that Jezebel was at that time a unique name associated with royalty. And they do believe it is probably related to the Jezebel we read about in the Bible. And so your picture, the picture down below, there's some letters, looks to me a lot like the Hebrew letters, very similar to Phoenician. But it points out, it's hard to see in the picture, but it points out these different Hebrew letters, and basically it reads belonging to Jezebel. Down at the very bottom it says reading, under all those Phoenician letters, it says reading and it says L in brackets and then YZBL. So the L, the Lamed letter means belonging to, and then the Jezebel is basically Jezebel. So throughout there are these pictures around it that says, or these letters around it that says belonging to Jezebel. Now Jezebel, while we're talking about her, she worshipped Baal, the Canaanite storm god, and you can see a stone relief of someone had drawn Baal. This was found in Syria in 1932. It's dated from about 6 centuries before Jezebel. They dated it, as best they can tell, from somewhere between 1650 and 1500 BC. So that's going to be just even before the Exodus. Now, let's see what's on page 4. So then there's another stone. It's called the Kirkstela of Shalmaneser III. Now, Shalmaneser III, he was a 9th century king of Assyria. And what this stone mentions, what it talks about, is in the inscription, it mentions Ahab. It mentions that Ahab sent troops to fight the Assyrians. And this was in 853 BC. The stone talks about Ben-Hadad, who was Ahab's brother. You can read about him in 1 Kings 20:33, where Ben-Hadad, Ahab's brother, is mentioned. This stone also notes how many chariots there were in the battles, and Ahab had the most. By the way, in this region, they also found a giant parking lot, parking lot for chariots, referring to, and we can think about how many chariots that it says these armies had. Well, Ahab had a tremendous amount of chariots, and they have uncovered what looks like a parking lot, basically a big field specifically meant for chariots. Related to Shalmaneser III, they found a black obelisk that was, and that's a tall stone. Looking for it in my notes. Here we go. There we go. That was erected in 825 BC. And this obelisk, again with inscriptions that tell stories, it records Shalmaneser III's campaigns. It might be the earliest pictorial reference to Israel and a king of Judah. So an actual picture of a king of Judah. Not a photograph, of course, but a drawing. It mentions Jehu, who's the son of Omri. It shows Jehu bowing to Shalmaneser. And so you see that picture down below, paying tribute to Shalmaneser. And so historians think that that guy down there on his knees bowing is the king Jehu in subjugation to Shalmaneser. The next finding I want to tell you about is the Jehoash Tablet. It's controversial. It was found on an antiquities market, I guess kind of like eBay, not really eBay, but anyway, people buying and selling and trading. Someone found this and thought on the market and thought, oh, this looks special, and they investigated what it is. It's controversial because it was thought to be a forgery, and it actually went through a 10-year-long series of trials by the Israelite government, them trying to figure out, is this thing a forgery or not? And so after 10 years, they decided, yes, it is authentic. It mentions repairs to the temple. It mentions Yahweh, this Jehoash tablet. They think the best they can figure is it was written, it was inscribed somewhere between 842 and 802 BC. If you want to at home read some of the things that it talks about, these repairs to the temple, you can cross-reference 2 Kings 11:21 through 12:21. It tells that story. And also 2 Chronicles 24:1 through 27. So that's the tablet that they found. Sometimes these tablets and things that they find are controversial. I can't remember if it's this one in particular, some other one, but I remember my archaeologist professor telling me a story of sometimes things will be found that aren't supposed to be found, meaning there is holy, different the Muslims consider some of that holy land, and sometimes people go digging where they're not supposed to be by law, and they find things, and then it's kind of legally controversial. Well, what do we do with this thing? It might be a great find, but it was against the law to be digging there. So sometimes there's interesting controversies that come up with these. And I can't remember if the Jehoash Tablet is one of those, but yeah. Okay, another item is the Seal of Jeroboam. The Seal of Jeroboam, which, okay, we're on page 5. You can see down below, which has a lion with script on it. And it says, down below in that picture, it says, belonging to Shema, the servant of Jeroboam. So this seal would have been for sealing documents with wax or some material like that. So Jeroboam II, he ruled the northern kingdom from 790 BC to 750 BC. I'd like to read to you this story from 2 Kings 14:23 through 29, and I've got it printed there on your handout. It says, in the 15th year of Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, king of Israel, became king in Samaria. And he reigned 41 years. Okay, so let's just stop there. I'm talking about the Seal of Jeroboam right now. Previously, I was just talking about the Jehoash Tablet, and so there it is in the Bible. Jehoash, and then his son was Jeroboam. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and did not turn away from any of the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. He was the one who restored the boundaries of Israel from Lebo Hamath to the Sea of the Arabah, in accordance with the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, spoken through his servant Jonah, son of Amittai, the prophet from Gath-Hepher. The Lord had seen how bitterly everyone in Israel, whether slave or free, was suffering. There was no one to help them. And since the Lord had not said he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, son of Jehoash. As for the other events of Jeroboam's reign, all he did, his military achievements, including how he recovered for Israel both Damascus and Hamath, which had belonged to Yaudi, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jeroboam rested with his fathers, the kings of Israel, and Zechariah his son succeeded him as king. Okay, so there we have the Seal of Jeroboam, again with a lion, and in that Hebrew, if you're interested in linguistics and language, the letters on the lion, reading from right to left, right up here, it says belonging to Shema. And so there's this letter right here, that first one, and again, we have to read from right to left. And that letter, which is like this, it means belonging to. You go back to the Seal of Jezebel. And on the Seal of Jezebel, in the little, what's it called? The key down below, it says Lamed, and there's a similar symbol right there. It's a little shorter right here, and that's that same letter there, Lamed. Anyway, that's why I showed you that Lam, that L, Lamed. It means belonging to. And so just kind of neat. I love ancient languages even when I can't read them. So that Lamed there means belonging to. So belonging to Shema, the servant of Jeroboam. It is very neat to be able to find these archaeological findings that attest, that show, they actually relate to the people, the stories that we read in the Bible to show their truthfulness. So there's that. That's as far as I've gone taking the lesson today. I was so worried about having gone over the last couple of weeks that I cut it a little short this week. Do y'all have any questions for me? Anything at all? Yes?
Yeah, John, was it common in those days, because Shema was a servant of Jeroboam, for him to have a seal like that?
help me out if you know, Dennis. I'm guessing that he was a very high-ranking servant, and so he was the one. Notice it's not called the Seal of Shema, it's the Seal of Jeroboam. I'm wondering if he was maybe a rather high-ranking servant, and he was the one who did the secretarial work, did the stamping. That's what I guess. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, they had that concept of being a steward. They would still be called a servant, but they actually had tons of responsibilities.
Right.
So.
Okay. Yeah. So like the chief White House chief of staff.
He was way up there.
Pretty high ranking, but still a servant. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I just wondered.
Anything else? Okay. Well, we have 2 weeks.